Hi, and welcome to the onboarding videos. This is video number 3 for Breadwinner for NetSuite, the guided wizard. So in the prior video, specifically video number 2, you saw how from an opportunity, I clicked on a button that created a new sales order. And we'll just run through that really quickly. Remember that opportunity had a couple opportunity products. A whole bunch of fields have been mapped over here. Here's those 2 opportunity products. Great. We're going to create the sales order in NetSuite. But how do we get that button on there? How do we configure it? Well, let's start by taking a look at the button. Now we were going from the opportunity, but what we want to go to is the destination object, the sales order. Go to buttons and links, and this is the button I was just on. But you might be wondering, how do I create that? Well, before we dive into that, let's take a look at Breadwinner security. So one of the things we have to make sure is that it's not in read-only mode, it has to be in active mode. And the person who uses that button either has to be a Salesforce administrator or they have to have the right Breadwinner permission set. The read-only permission set does exactly what you think. It only lets you read. So someone would need the standard or higher Breadwinner permission set to actually be able to create this. This is presuming that you've installed Breadwinner for NetSuite in your org as admins only, which is what we always recommend, because the permission sets are there to grant any non-admins the permission they need. So you would need to be a Breadwinner, you'd need to have a Breadwinner permission set of standard, or you need to be a Salesforce admin, and read-only mode would have to be off. Okay, so let's look at how we would create this. Let's head over to docs.breadwinner.com, NetSuite, custom guided wizard. And this goes through a few things. We're going to come over to the button URL structure. One of the things you might want to do is just leverage the fact that we can create the button URL for you. So let's take a look at this page. So to get here, you need to go to Visualforce Pages in Salesforce Setup and click on the custom URL generator. Visualforce Pages. Now you probably have a lot more Visualforce pages, so you have to find this, but it is called the custom URL generator. And I'm going to click on this little link here. We're going to ask a series of questions, such as which object do you want to create? We're going to create a sales order. We also ask what object you want to create from, and I'm going to choose an opportunity. You can choose anything. You can choose a custom object. You can use a standard object. The most typical we see are opportunity, order, contract. We recommend you don't do it from quote, but it's certainly possible. And of course, you can use CPQ. You might have another ISV or OEM app. You might have even rolled your own invoice or sales order object for whatever reason. Go ahead and pick that there. Now, you don't have to use line items. Sometimes our customers want to fill those in manually, but the most typical situation is, yes, I do want to auto-create line items on that sales order, and I want to auto-create them from the opportunity products. This is a required field, and it says, hey, which is the Salesforce account this should go under? If you remember video number 2, when I was creating those records, I was like, hey, look, there's 4 NetSuite companies affiliated with this Salesforce account? Well, that's how we look at the correct affiliated NetSuite companies, is by looking at the account. Some of these are a little bit trickier. So for the department, NetSuite only accepts numeric IDs for the department, not necessarily for the text, which is what you might be more familiar with. And I believe that is also the same for location or class. So sometimes for some of the pick lists in NetSuite, there's some additional work to do. Select a field for the NetSuite item. And here we want to use the NetSuite item internal ID. And that's mapped through a couple other things, and I can get to that later. And then we can optionally add anything you want. You might even want to make your own custom field here, but we're just going to grab the Salesforce line item description. Sometimes people only sell one, and we actually have the option to say, hey, just say use the number one. Or equally, you might use the Salesforce quantity, rate, we're going to use list price, you might use something else, and we'll leave all of that as is and click generate URL. Great, and here is the text. We're going to copy that. We're going to go to the NetSuite sales order button, and I'm going to put new button or link. And for this, we're going to delete this in a second, so I'm just going to call it example button. So you might also wonder, what should I do over here? Well, you'll find that right here. We're going to have this as a list button. Display in existing window, do not display checkboxes, without sidebar or header. And then I'm going to paste that in. And there's one other thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to add, and this is optional, but we absolutely recommend it, add testing equals true at the end. Great, I'm going to click save. I'm not done yet. I have to go to the opportunity, which is where we want this. And this is where even I get confused half the time. I start off by putting the button on the opportunity, and I remember, oh, that's right. No, I have to put it on the sales order. And then I edit the sales order page, forgetting that no, in fact, I have to be editing the opportunity page, or the originating object, if you will. And this works fine in Lightning and Classic. Some people like to put the button at the top. We generally recommend you put it on the related list just as a sanity check. So there's the example button, so people can see if a sales order or invoice has already been created. Save, great. Let's head back to an opportunity. And there we go. There is the example button. Now remember, I have testing equals true on that, so you're going to see something you haven't seen on other pages. Testing equals true brings this up. We're a bit like a sanity check, where we're saying, okay, there's a NetSuite field called location. What field in Salesforce did you tell us we should bring from? Well, you didn't give us one, so there's nothing. But there's also a field on the line item called description. What field did you provide in the guided wizard? You said we should look at the description field. Great, which happens to be blank on this one. But here's the quantity and here's the rate. So this is a great way just to sanity check what's going on, because if you get to the next page, and this is what anyone who's not a Salesforce admin will see, and equally, this is what you'd see if you didn't have testing equals true on there. You might turn around and say, hey, why isn't this field here? I expected something different. I expected something to be here. Who knows what? And that is the beauty, I'll just do this one more time, of the button having testing equals true on it. You get this great sanity checking page that, again, only admins can see. And there we go. That will bring you through to the main sales order creation page. Now you might have questions about, hey, what about custom fields in NetSuite? How do I handle that? What about this? What about that? What about pick lists? What about lookup fields? Where do I get the NetSuite IDs from? This all seems complicated. What about currency fields, transaction fields, line item fields, custom fields? All of that is documented here. And we have some example buttons, and you have the custom URL generator. So between that, you can go pretty far and possibly complete this by yourself. A couple of things to keep in mind, which you would have already noticed, or you may have already noticed, it's quite possible to have multiple buttons on the same page. This can really work well for when you're testing something, when you have different business processes. You can decide where and when these buttons show up. You can handle it however you want. And in fact, you could, for instance, create sales orders from opportunities and from orders and from contracts. So there's no limitation to this. The buttons, you could have multiple buttons on one object, multiple buttons on multiple objects, and there's a tremendous amount of flexibility, and each button will have its own URL structure. So we've seen customers do a 50% deposit button. Whatever you're currently doing in NetSuite to manually create that sales order, by and large, you should be able to replicate that. Here I am on the opportunity. You can see the complication. You should be able to replicate that logic into one of the buttons. And remember that even when you are creating, edge cases can always be handled by a last minute order. Sorry, by a last minute edit. So you could, for whatever reason, add additional text or anything to the sales order before it's created. So we call this automation with review, sometimes human in the loop. It's ideal for any invoice with significant value, $10,000 and above perhaps, where 30 seconds of a human reviewing everything is the right move. However, for very high volume and or low amount invoices who want pure automation, we do have that, and that will be covered in another video where you can use our API to mass create. Okay, thank you so much and I hope you have enjoyed onboarding video number 3, our guided wizard.